Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson, and thank you so much for joining us today because I have asked Andrea Aranguren, who is the CEO of Minehub, and I want you to sit up and take notice because this is a little bit different. And for those of you out there that go, oh, it's technology I don't understand, neither did I until I went into really what they're doing. And they're solving a massive problem. And I'm going to get you to understand what that massive problem is and why I find this fascinating. The world is moving really quickly. And I think that Minehub is at a really interesting part of their journey. And they're on the TSXV. The TSXV code is MHub, really easy, MHub, like Minehub, but it's MHub. They're also on the OTC as MHub F. I think I got that right. Hope so. Andrea is the CEO of Minehub, and she's going to explain what it is that they're solving and why right now is a really important time for you guys to understand the world we're in, especially in, I guess, digital supply chain and logistics. And one of the things Andrea talked to me about before was, and wait for it, I've got to read this, private digital title initiative. Now, I didn't fully understand it. I still don't quite. So Andrea's going to explain why this is a game changer for Minehub. So Andrea, a bit of a long introduction, but I really appreciate your time. I would love our audience to fully understand, because they're investors, they're looking at opportunity. Let's just start off with, I guess, the history of Minehub, because your background is you were operations and logistics with Goldman Sachs. That's a big company. And now you've gone to a startup, because I think of it as a startup, because you're really at the start of this journey. So going from Goldman's to Minehub, that's a big change, Andrea. So explain to us, what was that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. In some ways, a very big change. It's funny, my COO is from Goldman, and a lot of the leadership from Abaxx is from Goldman as well. So I feel like we've still sort of translated the Goldman culture, but of course it's still very, very different. So I was working at Goldman for several years and spending just a huge amount of time at work. I wanted a little bit more flexibility, a bit more work-life balance. So I went into consulting, more flexibility, obviously, with my day-to-day. And I started working with a variety of different startups, helping them with supply chain digitization and optimization. And then in 2019, I co-founded a company called Waybridge, which set out with a mission to digitize the physical commodity supply chain. It took us a while to figure out what that meant. Our first product was a procurement platform that helped manufacturers that were purchasing raw materials such as copper, cathode, copper or aluminum to manage that via our platform. And we started competing more and more with Minehub. And then in 2023, we actually decided to sell Waybridge to Minehub, and I became the CEO of Minehub. So that's a very brief overview of the journey.
And I appreciate that, but what's important here is I'm speaking to you in September 2025, that merger between Waybridge, which was focused on that sort of refined copper and aluminium sector, and Minehub, which was focused on concentrates and bulk commodities, bringing those two together. What did you see as it, because you're Waybridge?
Yeah,
I guess it wasn't a takeover, it was more like a merger, if you like. So
it was definitely more like a merger.
yeah.
And there were an incredible amount of synergies from a commercial perspective because we were talking to a lot of the same customers. But really what that merger unlocked was the opportunity to expand our visibility over the supply chain, because concentrates and bulk commodities get refined to become refined copper and aluminum. And so whereas Minehub was focused on the earlier stage of the supply chain, Waybridge was focused on a bit more downstream. And so by combining the two companies and the two data sets and the two ecosystems, we were really able to expand our coverage and offer more traceability as cargo moves throughout the supply chain and even gets processed or transformed.
Explain to us, if you would, what is the overall problem that Minehub is solving? Why do I care?
Sure. So in the absence of Minehub, the physical commodity supply chain is very, very complicated, right? So it's not like you going on Amazon and you want to buy some some pencils, and they arrive sometimes the same day, right? It's a seamless experience. You know exactly where they are. You click a button and everything's paid for, and it's seamless.
Yeah.
In the physical commodity supply chain, it is pretty much the complete opposite of that, where there are hundreds and hundreds of shipments moving all around the world in trucks, on containers, in rail cars, and all of that data is changing in every instant because the shipments are constantly moving, information is constantly flowing, and all of that is being managed pretty much manually in emails and in Excel files with people trying to keep track of all of this information. I'll give you an example. We have one of our manufacturing customers. They receive 500 truck shipments in one day at one facility, and they have 5 facilities, and that's just one day. That's 500 bills of lading that get manually entered into Excel spreadsheet that you're trying to keep track of. Which order did that come from? Which supplier did that come from? What's the pricing for that? Were the documents there? Can I get the analysis to actually understand the quality of the material? So it's almost impossible to keep track of in real time. And so what Minehub does is that we create connectivity to all of the sources of data so that a customer can log in, they can see all of their orders, all of their purchases, all of their sales, all of the shipments, exactly where in the world they are, all of the documents without having to spend 1 second in Excel manually inputting one piece of data. Everything is there in real time reconciled for them. And what's really powerful is that our platform is what we call a multi-party platform, where both the buyer and the seller both can see the information. And that's really powerful from a risk mitigation perspective because data is not manipulated. It's validated by both the buyer and the seller who are seeing the information in what becomes a central source of truth for their business. If they want to see where is my cargo, what is my inventory, how are my suppliers delivering, how am I delivering, how am I performing against my customers, all of that they can see in Minehub. And then without Minehub, you're basically going through your Outlook inbox, looking at thousands of emails and looking in different spreadsheets, just trying to figure out the answer to very basic questions. And as you mentioned, I was in logistics at Goldman for many years, and I did that job, right? I opened all those PDFs, I went through all those emails.
You've been through the pain.
I was a 20-year-old analyst, manually inputting thousands of pieces of data into Excel spreadsheet. Like I did that, right? There's fat finger errors. You couldn't possibly keep track of everything. And back in the day, we didn't even have close to the scope of supply chain disruptions that we're seeing today. So when I was buying material and my supplier said they were going to deliver 10 trucks, 99% of the time those 10 trucks arrived and there were no issues. But now you're seeing huge disruptions in the supply chain. You're seeing regulatory changes. You're seeing all these macro forces that are really requiring the need for a platform like Minehub. You just can't continue to operate in this old school way anymore.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions on this one. What stops your competition coming in and eating your lunch, so to speak? So what I want to know is barrier to entry, because if we're looking at this as an investment, what happens if, I don't know, somebody comes along and says, we can do exactly what they're doing and we'll do it better?
The biggest barrier to entry is that we have the first mover advantage, is that we've spent the last few years building our network and that we have the largest industry players using our platform and driving adoption for us. And once we deploy our platform, it is very, very sticky. We've had 100% renewal with every key customer. So we have Codelco using our platform, the largest producer of copper in the world. And so that really matters. The strength of our network and the caliber and scale of our customers would be very, very hard to sort of take away from us. The second thing is that, when we founded Waybridge and we spent quite some time figuring out, we need to digitize the physical commodity supply chain, and we couldn't understand how could it be that you benefit from all of these incredible technologies and the seamless experience in your personal life, but you're buying $1 million worth of copper and you have no idea where it is. Like, how is this possible? So we actually researched other companies that had come to the market and failed. So we're not the first company that have tried to do this, right? There's been a variety of other companies that have tried to digitize aspects of the supply chain. And in a lot of ways try to achieve the goals that we've been achieving. But in many ways, it was either people from the industry that were tired of operating this way, but they weren't technologists and they didn't know how to build large scale enterprise technology, or it was technologists that saw the opportunity because this is a $12 trillion commodity supply chain that needs to be digitized, but they didn't come from the industry, so they didn't really understand the nuances of the problem. And what we bring to this is this really unique combination of understanding the industry, having the network, having the backing of the largest customers in the market, but also having the technical capabilities and the caliber of our team to build that large scale enterprise technology that can scale and really handle the complexity and the massive amount of risk and data that you see in the system.
What's your biggest challenge right now?
Our biggest challenge is driving adoption. It's a huge network effect, and the physical commodity supply chain is very, very old school. They've been operating the same way for hundreds of years. Demographic of people
sorry to interrupt you. I've just got a view of these
no.
males or females. It doesn't really matter, saying, but we've always done it this way.
Exactly. And I'm happy with my Excel spreadsheet. And, after this, a lot of times we do workshops and we try to understand, but then why do you do that? I don't know. We just always did that. But that doesn't make sense, And so change is hard, especially in an industry that's very old school. And we see that changing with regulatory changes and all of the disruptions that we've seen in the market, tariffs. There were issues with the rail cars from Canada into the US. Like all of these big issues really are a forcing function for people to recognize when these huge disruptions happen. I had no way to see what inventory I had at risk or how to best communicate with my suppliers. And then, and so I would say change management adoption is slower than we would like, but the opportunity is massive. And we see over time, Minehub really being the only platform that could service the entire market.
It's kind of I can see what's happening, if you like, because it's like slowly, then all at once, because people will start to go, oh wow. Because one of my questions is, I assume in adopting something like Minehub for a company, they have to be saving money, because you don't have all these people manually putting in all that. So I'm looking at going, well, the company will save some money, and you don't have the human issue of, whoopsies, I made a mistake. There were 12 trucks, not 10.
Yes. And we talk about this all the time in our sales meetings, right? When we look at ROI for customers using the platform, it's in the millions. You see millions of dollars in savings per year from say avoided plant shutdowns, from improving the use of working capital, from getting better visibility into your incoming material flows and your inventory, from better communicating, collaborating with your counterparties. But what's interesting is that you would think that you go to the company CFO and say, I'm going to save you at least $1 million. Let's go. And, it's still, there's a hesitation, a trepidation around change and digitization in general. But we're seeing that changing for sure over time. And we're seeing a lot more openness and actual focus from companies where it's a key digital initiative, a key corporate initiative for them to digitize. And so it's just the reality of the industry.
There's also, I guess, a bit of a concern around hacking. When we digitize everything, the potential is, I guess, a CFO would turn around and say, if I've got all of my information sitting on this platform, someone hacks in, ouch. Do you think that's an issue?
We get that question all the time. And that's why we spend a lot of money and resources in ensuring that we uphold the highest standards as it relates to data security. So we do a third-party audit. We do penetration testing. Our customers sometimes hire hackers to simulate hacking our platform as a prerequisite for using the platform. And so the power of having all of your data in a central source of truth is incredible, but there is a risk that comes with that. And we acknowledge the intense responsibility that we have to safeguard and keep that data private, which is why it's a key focus of our team and a constant investment for us. But yeah, I think that companies are getting much, much more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Years ago, people were even worried about sharing, bill of lading shipment data, which really isn't commercially sensitive with us. But then they realized that our platform is just so much more secure than email. You're already sending that information via email.
Good
And we are
point.
so more
Yeah.
secure than email. So you can replace all of those thousands of emails that could get hacked or intercepted or forward to somebody that you don't know. And instead, it's in a secure platform with a huge amount of controls around who can log in, who can see what information.
Yeah,
So when they
really good
digging
point.
in, yeah, when we present to the digital teams and the technical teams, they love our framework because of all of that.
Okay, let's get into more on the investment side of things. And I want to get into a couple of things. One is Abaxx, which you've done a deal with recently. But before I get into that, let's talk about revenue. Where are we sitting at the moment as a company with revenue? Where's it coming from? And are you profitable at the moment, or are you still working your way towards that?
Yeah. So right now we're primarily a SaaS company. So we charge our customers SaaS fees for the use or for access to a license to use the platform. And we bill typically on a volumetric basis, which is really interesting. We spent a lot of time iterating on the business model. And we found that in this industry, it's very intuitive for customers to pay on a volume basis because that's really closely aligned and almost perfectly correlated with the value that they receive from the platform. And so we charge volumetrically. The fees depend, based on their use and their engagement of the platform. And so we're seeing customer revenues increase. We're seeing a huge growth in our sales pipeline. So for years, we were focused almost predominantly on copper and aluminum. But we've done a big push in the last 3 to 6 months to expand to adjacent commodities, to other metals like iron ore and steel, scrap metals.
Gold?
And we are seeing huge gold. So we're letting Abaxx cover gold for now, but definitely a potential partnership and a collaboration in the future. We have seen some interest for gold on traceability. I heard an incredible thing yesterday that we had a broker that sold one kilo of gold to Europe, and they had to get 4,000 certifications from suppliers to sell that 1 kilo of gold, which Minehub could digitize all of that data overnight. So maybe you're onto something with gold. But what we're seeing is a tremendous validation in our value proposition in new markets beyond copper and aluminum. We're seeing huge growth in our sales pipeline. We're really encouraged about our revenue growth that we're seeing throughout the year. And towards the end of the year, we are getting nearer and nearer to profitability. We are starting to think bigger, though. We were very focused on growing SaaS fees, and we started investing more and more time in exploring partnerships. And as we did that, we realized there were all these opportunities to collaborate with more niche platforms, or with other partners that shared the same goals as ours. And so we've been investing more in partnerships. We signed a partnership with a company called SureComp, which will help us get into trade finance. We've also been exploring some partnerships with a company called CargoGo, which brings us into Asia. But our most important partner is Abaxx, for sure, Abaxx Technologies. So we can talk about that as well.
Let's talk about that right now, because this is something that's happened recently. Explain to us who are Abaxx and why this is a good partnership going forward for the company.
Yeah. So Abaxx is a really interesting company because it's almost various companies in one. Abaxx has the Abaxx Exchange. So they are a commodities exchange that is offering risk management or futures contracts that can be physically delivered. So an alternative to the traditional sort of hedging contracts that you see within the market or risk management vehicles, for really focus on commodities markets. They have a big focus on battery metals, which is really exciting for us because that's a market that we're excited to go into. So they're an exchange with offering hedging and risk management contracts. They're also a technology company. So Abaxx Technologies has built pretty revolutionary technology that allows data to be shared securely in a decentralized ecosystem. So similar to your Apple phone, when you log into your phone and you put your face on your phone and all of your data is on your phone. When you lose your phone, you just have to log into another phone and all your data is magically appears on your phone.
Yeah,
Well,
I have
they're
no
leveraging
idea how that works. I have no idea
it's
how that works.
amazing,
It's
right?
like, oh,
So
magic.
that happens via this secure architecture, which allows you to have your data on your device. So it's securely on your device, but can be shared seamlessly. And Abaxx is enabling this framework where data can be shared between systems and between platforms, much more securely and efficiently than we can today. And so they're leveraging those two things in what they're calling their private digital title initiative, which is really, it's hard to explain, but it's basically this notion of making it much easier to transfer title or ownership from a physical product than you can today. So if you think about the innovations in the payment structure, we were talking about this earlier, and I think it's a good example that before, if I had to pay you for something, I wanted to pay you by check, I would have to write the check out, put it in an envelope, mail it to you. You'd have to receive that, go to the bank and deposit the check. But now I can just seamlessly pay you in 10 seconds on Venmo or Zelle or whatever application that you use. And that velocity of money has grown exponentially because of digital innovation. And that's really what Abaxx is looking to do with their digital title and their digital collateral initiative is be able to transform physical commodities or physical cargoes, just like that check, into something that can be traded and transferred seamlessly and much more quickly. And that opens up all of these opportunities, not just for more transparent markets and less risky markets, but it means that if I'm buying a cargo from you and it's going to take 45 days to come to me, I have to wait for that cargo to arrive and to be delivered, for me to then sell it again, or for me to pledge it as collateral, or for margin. And now with the Abaxx structure, I don't need to wait for that physical cargo to actually be delivered for me to be able to get title transferred and to be able to then sell it again, or to even post it as collateral or margin for any hedging contract that I have. And so it's going to really change the entire dynamic of how physical cargoes and commodities are financed. And if you read about Abaxx's first two pilots, they're really centered on gold and money market funds. And it's really around collateralizing and testing this whole structure. And where Minehub fits into that is that because of our capabilities to manage in-transit cargo, then we can extend this to any cargo moving throughout the world.
So if I'm right, the Abaxx manage the title and Minehub are managing the logistics. Am I right in that? Because what I want
so Abaxx is creating the technological opportunity for us to digitize the cargo in a way that title can be transferred. So Abaxx won't be transferring the title, but they created the technology, just like the Venmo or all of these digital platforms created the opportunity for me to digitally send money to you in a legally secure way into your actual bank account. Abaxx is creating the structure, the legal enforceability, and the technology that creates the opportunity for that data to be digitized. And then Minehub provides the tracking, the GPS capabilities, and the monitoring of the cargoes that allows the network to know this cargo has been delivered. These contractual terms have been actually determined. So therefore title can be transferred.
So again, I'm trying to understand it from an investment point of view. The deal between Abaxx and Minehub, is that like a 50-50? Like what's the revenue streams look like is it a good thing from a shareholder?
It's less about the revenue streams and it's more about the TAM. So it means that now the entire $12 trillion commodity supply chain all of that material that is being financed can now be financed much more efficiently than ever before. That is the real opportunity. It will be transformational for the entire industry. The TAM is in the billions and in the trillions. We're still defining the scope of what the commercial model will be, but it's more about what this represents in terms of a transformational shift in terms of how cargoes are traded and financed. So Minehub and Abaxx have very solid business models on their own, driving revenue growth by, at the Abaxx exchange and the technology SaaS products, and Abaxx and Minehub is continuing to sell our platform into the market, driving revenue growth for our SaaS product. And this digital title initiative is just supercharging kind of the potential of both companies. And there are no other companies in the world that are even remotely close to achieving this goal of digital title, which is something that, if you're an investor and you work in the industry, is something that for decades companies have been trying to solve this problem. And so we have a major first mover advantage. We are uniquely positioned. There are no two other companies that could even remotely come close to trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, we're nearly out of time. I want to ask you a couple more things, if I could, Andrea. What's your market cap at the moment? Because you mentioned 12. This is a $12 billion market.
Yes, we've seen a nice uptick in the last few days, but we're still at around 60 million Canadian. So we're a really small company. It's, we think, incredibly undervalued. It's an amazing opportunity from an investor perspective to get in really in the earlier stages of a company that has a lot of sort of risk mitigation aspects, because we do have product market fit. We have a very mature platform. We have leading companies using the platform, and that really mitigates risk for investors. Yet we're still in the early stages, and we're really at this exciting inflection point. So it's an amazing time to really look at Minehub.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up in a nice little box, if we could, Andrea. And you poor thing, I know, and I appreciate.
I know, I got a cough. Yes, my kids are in school, and of course, I got a coughing attack now.
She's got children in school, ladies and gentlemen. What happens? I remember when my child was in school, you get everything. They love to bring it home and share it with mummies.
Yeah.
3 reasons people should sit up and take notice of Minehub right now. You did mention just then, so we'll take this one off the table, that it's a 60 mil market cap, ladies and gentlemen. That's a $12 trillion market. So I think that there's expansion on the way and some clever deals that they're doing. And of course, as I said before, Andrea comes from Goldman Sachs. She understands how to grow businesses, and especially in this area. But I'm going to leave the last word to you, Andrea.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our valuation is incredibly attractive. I think the network we've built is unbeatable, and it takes a huge amount of time. Change doesn't happen overnight, and building that network is a huge investment. And we have a network of more than 200 of the largest and leading companies in the market connected to our ecosystem, which is incredibly valuable and would take any other competitor a very, very long time and a huge amount of effort to replicate. And then the work that we're doing with Abaxx Private Digital Title really is going to be transformational. It's an incredible opportunity to get involved with a company that will be the critical backbone of the physical commodity supply chain.
It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, Andrea. I think you've got the tiger by the tail. It's a big market. You're solving a massive problem. And I'm going to look forward to seeing what you might be doing in the gold space going forward. But for now, thanks so much for joining me on Making Money Matter.